Now, all right, what's going on, guys? We're back from some technical difficulties from last night. Sasha said that, well, Jonas Mark, sorry. We're going to be discussing all the more wrestling news related shit, but I think you wanted to say what the problem was last night, so go right ahead.
Oh, yes, the lovely part where somebody hit a transformer in the town next to us. So I don't know if that was car related, technology related, or what, but basically a transformer went down in the town over and completely fucked up my phone and wouldn't connect, wouldn't load, and it was only doing like the emergency calls and emergency shit.
And you
But
said that
everything's working now.
and you said this was like something that's happened like every 4 or 5 years in your area.
It happens every so often. It's normally during big storms and um really shitty weather this happens. This is, I think, the first time it ever happens when there was no bad weather.
That's so outrageous. Well, I think I should also offer an apology for my performance after that happened because it kind of just reminded me of the older videos, and it just reminds me that the whole reason I beg is so that we can do this. So I had someone to play off of, and as just as big into wrestling as I am. So that's kind of why we're here. But before we go into it, I did want to go back to the point you were making before the signal went off, and you were saying that Matt Riddle's kind of like the replacement Jeff Hardy.
Yes.
So yeah, you can go ahead and talk about that for a second.
He's, I feel like he's a PG TV 14 wannabe edgy ripoff of like Jeff Hardy. Like, he's not the high flyer, he's not that, but everybody knows Jeff Hardy's a stoner and has a history with drugs. And I feel like they're trying to be edgy with Matt Riddle. And he's essentially the Shaggy of Scooby Doo. Everyone knows he's a stoner. They just don't directly say it. And they just want to have a edgy person with flip flops. Like, he doesn't have a gimmick. He's some guy who looks like Willy Wonka and Carrot Top popped out a deformed baby and put flip flops on it and said, "Here, sign a wrestling contract."
I love
He's,
the Willy Wonka reference because of the fact that they have those rainbow pigeons that are flying around after he gets his pyro when he does his
yeah,
signature pose in the ring.
or he just sucks.
But at the same time, I mean, not a whole lot of people think stoner when they see Jeff Hardy. That seems to be more of a thing with like Rob Van Dam, and I could kind of see them being like a PG Rob Van Dam because they kind of talk the same way.
Yeah,
So
but when I
I
think
never
Rob Van
I didn't
Dam,
get the Jeff Hardy comparison there. It was more like Rob Van Dam, only like more for kids, basically.
but Rob Van Dam's like a high flyer. When I think Rob Van Dam, I think ECW, not frickin' I don't know. When I think Jeff Hardy, I think SmackDown or Raw. When I think Rob Van Dam, I think ECW and Hardcore.
Yeah, even Rob Van Dam wasn't the most hardcore guy on that company either. There was a
No,
lot more like hardcore guys like the Tommy Dreamers and the Sandmans and the Ravens. They
not
were a
true.
little bit more. And the New Jacks. I think that's a good transition to our first wrestling news topic, the death of New Jack.
Mm.
Um, I would say that I don't think anybody saw this coming, but I think deep down, what we knew about New Jack and the fact that he was kind of a druggie, it kind of didn't take away a whole lot, but it did make a lot of sense that he would die from a heart attack from that shit. But irregardless, New Jack just seemed like the kind of guy that knew how to make a statement and knew how to make himself known for better or worse within the wrestling company. I mean, there's a reason why WWE wanted to stay as far away from him as possible, and it's because that he was a guy that did what he wanted to do on his own terms. And you talk about early in his career when he was shooting promos, um, trying to uh, push the buttons of white people when he was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling with Jim Cornette, or when he was in ECW, when he really started to go into the hardcore shit. You love him or hate him, he was someone that you could remember. Honestly, I mean, you hear the name New Jack, and you think of a lot of crazy shit that he did over the years. So, and I know a lot of people were saying now mass transit has his justice, which I completely disagree with. I'll get into that a little bit. But before I do that, what were some of your thoughts about this whole thing?
I mean, I just sort of grew up. He was someone I watched growing up. I remember watching, I think, YouTube videos of him. I used to always watch wrestling at school. Um, I'd always sneak it on my phone, or when I was in the computer lab, just look up stuff on YouTube. But yeah, he's just, I don't know, he's someone, whether you liked him or hated him, he was popular, people knew him. He's someone who actually like stuck around, like you actually remember him. It's not like now where you have like, I can't even think, like Luchasaurus in fucking 10 years from now, 10, 50 years, if Luchasaurus dies, people are going to be like, who the hell was that? Like, people aren't going to know who he is. People aren't going to know who fucking Matt Riddle is. Like, there's all these people who just aren't going to make an impact like he did, whether people liked him or not. He was actually memorable.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, I actually saw the Dark Side of the Ring special that talked about his career and a little bit of about his upbringings. And once you get all that information, it kind of makes sense for him to have had the personality that he did, have have the way he did business the way that he did. I mean, you know that everything just fit into place when you really sink into his life and all that crazy shit. But a lot of people talk about the mass transit incident with a big kid that was 17 years old, even though he was lying about his age, and he apparently got bladed on a little too far from New Jack, and that set off a firestorm in the media. He went to court for it. He was found not guilty. And honestly, anybody that is saying justice for mass transit is just a fucking dumbass because the kid lied about who he was. He knew what the weapons were. And honestly, you can't really say that kind of shit knowing all those facts. Seriously. And also, there was another incident um, back in 2003 where he stabbed a guy, like a wrestler that wanted to face him. A lot of people give him shit for that, but I guess the guy was at least well enough that he wanted to challenge him to like rematches all across Florida for that shit. So yeah, he wasn't a total monster. I mean, if you push his buttons enough, he would do the shit that he was known for. But yeah, he definitely leaves a legacy, a very complicated legacy, but one that we'll still remember. Honestly, anything more to add there?
Nothing really, just that, I don't know. I feel like people are going to remember him. He's was a big part of wrestling and he at least contributed something regardless of the incidents that happened. It's like people knew who he was. He's not just going to fade away in 5 years. Like I can't even think of 10 people on today's roster who I'm going to care about or remember in 10 years.
I mean, we could probably talk about the part timers like Brock Lesnar, maybe John Cena, even though that's kind of a gray line to go into. But I know The Undertaker was wrestling up until last year. We'll definitely remember him. But yeah, everybody else had just haven't made a name for themselves in the last 15 years, aside from being like spot monkeys, or as you like to call them, Mexican jumping beans.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, they flip around. I forget what it was. It was a toy in the 90s. They were literally little beans. And no matter how much you flick them, or they were weighted or magnetic, and no matter how much you flick them or bend them down, they always flipped right back up. Like
Yeah.
you could literally whip the thing at a wall and it would go right back up. And that's literally what these things are. Like
Yeah.
this is where people are.
That's pretty accurate. Have you actually seen some of the shoot interviews that New Jack did like 10 years ago?
I have not.
I think I heard someone say that he did those shoots for like money for cocaine. I don't think that was really accurate, but I will say go check them out anyway because they're like the most hilarious shit you're gonna hear. Especially the one on Paul Heyman was pretty funny too. But so we're again, rest in peace, New Jack. A legacy, complicated legacy. I already said that, Shep. So we're gonna switch to a more lighter topic, and that was AEW. So this past week we did hear quite a bit about AEW. I know last week's show they did a couple things that was kind of hilariously stupid, and that was they tried to recreate a couple moments in WWE history, such as having one of their guys recreate a WrestleMania moment, the Shawn Michaels Ric Flair match, where just before Shawn Michaels gives Ric Flair one last super kick, he says, "I'm sorry, I love you." You remember that moment, right?
I remember that. That was one of the few good things that WWE did recently.
Yeah. Well, this time the Young Bucks and the Sweaty Bears decided to recreate that. And it just came out as phony and fake as you'd think. Honestly. I mean, I know it was just I don't even know how to describe it, but it was another line of cheap WWE digs that they've done. I still remember when AEW first came on, they said they weren't even going to make any mentions of WWE. They were going to be the exception. And yet, here we are a year and a half, and I could name enough moments on both my hands how many times they've taken a dig at WWE. It was kind of ridiculous. But that wasn't the only one. Apparently, later in the night, I believe they had the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle doing a segment where the Inner Circle recreated the Stone Cold Steve Austin beer truck segment. Only this time they had like one small squirt gun that shot out wine. I guess Chris Jericho has a wine company called a little bit of the bubbly because that was something he said when he won his world title when he was their inaugural world title. Again, another really phony one. Especially it wasn't even that great because they had Pinnacle sell, but by the time that the wine actually reached the ring, it was just kind of misty. And it's not something that you would start tripping over yourself for, but the Pinnacle were doing it. But yeah, what do you think about that bullshit for both of those, honestly?
I mean, I feel like they pretty much just took the Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels thing and ruined that, and now people are gonna, ugh, like that was a good thing. They only did it once, and now everyone's like trying to do it again. So it's like you're ruining something that was good. And yeah,
It
the
was
little thing.
heartfelt. That was the difference. It was very heartfelt because Sean and Rick were friends.
Yeah, they were friends. They had like a whole storyline behind it, and this is just freaking shitty people that we don't care about, and the two goddamn bears that no one gives a shit about.
Yeah.
And it's four people in a match recreating something, and yeah. And then the thing with the beer truck, like that's just crap. Like I saw what that was, and it's like, so you don't even have a giant beer truck, you just have some little shitty car that shoots out wine.
Yeah. Uh, continuing on, continuing on with the AEW stuff. Apparently, there's also some heat between the executive vice presidents of the company. As you know, Cody Rhodes is one executive vice president. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are the other ones because it's such a smart idea to have active wrestlers hold backstage roles because that works so well in WCW. But apparently, there is, I guess, a recently released WWE talent or someone from long ago that was let go, and these guys, I guess it was Kenny and the Young Bucks, they were thinking that this was going to be a game changer for them. But apparently, I'm guessing Cody Rhodes doesn't think this the same way, and it seems like ever since then they've been pretty much getting at each other's necks. And the most pathetic thing about it is this company is a year and a half old, right? So, it took about 10 years before we really saw the effects of some sort of dissension between like Kevin Nash booking himself in matches or Hulk Hogan doing his pulling his political card, not wanting to go over people. But this is just a year and a half, and you're already having to deal with people in the back making a hostile environment, honestly, at least for the higher ups. And honestly, I don't know who this particular talent that's hesitant that they're saying is a game changer is. It's probably like a CM Punk or a Daniel Bryan, honestly, if I had to guess. But this is just pathetic, man. A year and a half, and already you're dealing with this bullshit.
Yeah, I don't know who it is. It's not going to be anyone actually good. And you want to know the easiest way to solve this? Just shut down the entire company because it sucks.
Yeah, I mean
Like
that goes without saying.
no one likes AEW. And if people say they like it, then I don't believe it because it's crap.
I mean, we have a bunch of smarts that think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. A lot of it is just because they feel like they're wronged by the WWE because the people they want to push, which sucked, weren't pushed. So they had to go back into they wanted to back this company because they think it's a way of getting back at Vince and the WWE, despite the only thing that makes them close to competition is the fact that they have a millionaire owner, Tony Khan, who, as the Smarkbusters like to say, looks like a Rick Moranis lookalike. And apparently, he's a giant smark himself. But they're still having the same audience viewership. I know they were like a million a few weeks ago, but it's just been downhill in viewership since then. But yeah, not a good look when you have because if this is true, then this just shows how much the egos are really starting to fly. If I don't think it's a new one, honestly, because if you listen to Cody Rhodes, you can see ego very, very quickly. I mean, I think he did a promo last week where he said that he was going to do a match where he's known as the American Dream
Ugh.
as a tribute to his dad.
No one wants to watch that.
But why would you give these guys like um, office positions like that? Because they're just going to play favorites. Honestly, why are these guys doing this? Active wrestlers holding these management positions. I mean, seriously, how did if Tony was such a fan of the wrestling industry, like he likes to say that he is, how could he not see this coming? Seriously.
I don't know. I just feel like it's a year and a half. They're ripping everybody off. They can't even be original, and I feel like they're already running out of ideas and content. Not even 2 years in, so they're actually doing worse than TNA.
Yeah, has been on a slippery slope for the last 10 years at least, too.
At least they made it a year and a half though without selling out and copying everyone. So right now AEW is doing worse than TNA in my opinion.
Yeah, even with TNA though, they were known to take a few shots too. I mean, I still remember the Rhino promo where he pretended to burn the ECW championship because WWE wanted possession of the title back, or when Kenny Anderson and Eric Bischoff were making fun of the PG rating that WWE had because so they were known to do it. I don't think they were as prevalent as AEW had been doing, but it was still there. But yeah,
Yeah.
another thing I wanted to discuss was This was another thing that was early in the week. So you know how WWE are doing like these biography specials on A&E?
I did not know that.
Yeah, they've done it for Stone Cold, they've done it for Piper, they've done it for Hogan, and they did one for Booker T, I believe, last week. And apparently I saw that they went through most of Booker T's career, but the newsworthy item from that special is that they completely ignored his 2003 WrestleMania buildup. And do you remember what that buildup was?
I do not. I'll probably remember it when you say it, but I don't off the top of my head.
Because he was facing Triple H.
Ah, yes.
Yes, when Triple H was saying a guy like you doesn't deserve to be a world champion, it was a guy like me. You're here to entertain me. Boog, do a little dance for me. All those promos,
Yes.
and apparently it just sparked another big discussion about the issue of racism, like the racial undertones within
Yeah.
those promos. Um, I'm just gonna give my thoughts on this. I'm of the belief that if someone like the Hurricane or Goldust was in that position when Triple H was doing that promo, I don't think there would have been much of a difference because I feel like, and I think I remember Bruce Pritchard was saying this in a some sort of podcast a few years back. The whole idea behind those promos was that they were going more so for this guy's just an entertainer, and we're going to make fun of the fact that he's just an entertainer type. That's what I was getting out of those promos. Now, I think that the reason why they were they were thinking that they were going racist was the part when Triple H was describing like Booker a little bit more specifically when he said, you know, you and your nappy hair and your suckers and stuff like that. I can kind of see it a little bit, but I think that they were putting more emphasis on the entertainer aspect of Booker T during that time in his WWE career, especially when he was still in a tag team with Goldust. So that was just my thoughts on it. What were your thoughts with this one specifically?
I didn't see anything bad with it. It was literally Triple H telling him that you're not, basically saying you're not main event material. You're just pretty much at this level. You're seen as like, it would be like the equivalent of telling people now that they're at New Day level, because the New Day is like a comedy entertainment gimmick. And Booker for a while was sort of a, I wouldn't say comedian gimmick, but he was very energetic and animated in the ring with all the spinning moves and just very, he wasn't the traditional wrestler that I saw. Like, he wasn't traditional beat 'em up. He sort of like appeased to the crowd a lot, and I didn't see really any racial undertones of it. And even back then, like, I don't see how that's bad. I feel like nowadays somebody says anything like, oh, they have nappy hair, and then people are immediately just jump to race. It's like, no, that's not a racial thing. Like, you could say that and somebody could have nappy hair, like, big deal. That has nothing to do with black, that has nothing to do with white. Like, you could say that about Matt Riddle right now because he could have freaking nappy hair because he's got the weird ass poofy hair. So, like, I didn't see anything too bad of it. Like, I can see what people are getting like upset about or mad, but if people just, put on their big boy pants for a second and not just fall into the trap that everyone else does nowadays where everything needs to be offensive, everything needs to be an issue, it's actually not an issue if people look into it. It was literally Triple H just saying, you're more of an entertainer personality, you're not a main eventer type.
I want continuing on with the racist thing. There was another thing that popped up on NXT. I think it was this week. It was a new stable that they had, I'm trying to get it right now. Sorry about this, but I wanted to get the name of it. But it was like, oh, the name of the stable was called the Hit Row Records, and it's a black stable where you have guys like wearing hip hop clothes. I know there's a woman in there that's also in the hip hop clothing as well. And apparently, they're saying that this is racist because they're wearing urban clothing. And I think they were also doing this a lot too because this is now considered a racist symbol. At least I saw it in one of the photos, the promotional photos as well. I mean, let me see if I can get a photo from this as well. Hit Row Records. I just wanted to show you the image if I can. So I'm still trying to figure this sharing thing here as well. So, all right. Hold on one sec. I think we got it right here. Let me just. Oh, not even gonna show. So if you see on the right side, that's what they look like. Apparently, this is considered racist uh, from people for some reason. I mean, because I mean, how many times have we seen these kind of stables in WWE history? I mean, it's lazy, but I don't really consider it very racist unless they're like doing a lot of stereotypical stuff. I think it's just a look, honestly.
It's just a really cheesy, like half-assed gimmick. It's not racist.
Right. I
Like
know.
if you had Matt Riddle coming out doing blackface or like mocking like black culture or like people from Africa or something, then that'd be considered offensive. But like I don't see how that's racist. Like that's just a half-assed gimmick. Like that's literally the same as saying fucking who the hell was it? From SmackDown, that shitty tag team, Deuce and Domino with Cherry, the fucking
Oh
roller
yeah, the
skating. Yeah,
50s. Yeah,
it'd be like
50s like
saying,
Grease gimmick.
yeah, it'd be saying like that's racist against like the greaser Italians. It's like that's not racist. It's just a shitty
Oh my
gimmick.
god. If you consider that racist against Italians, what would they say about the Martin Scorsese stuff?
I don't know. I just feel like it's just literally a lazy gimmick. It's not. That's the thing. I feel like for it to be racist, people either need to be blatantly obvious, like, "Hey, we're gonna do this to try to push like limits," or we're this ignorant and stupid we don't realize it's offensive. That
I mean,
this
if you're
photo
going
is,
into the city, if you're going to cities, I mean, how many people like dress like that? That's part of the African American community. I don't see the racism here. Can somebody like try to break it down for me? I know they probably look dumb when they're doing it, but I still love to hear how it is, honestly.
yeah, because I don't get it. It's just a really shitty gimmick. That's all it is. It's a shitty gimmick, and I'm sure they'll get a different one in 6 months
Yep.
if they're around.
And Andy makes a good point here. The context is what matters with this kind of stuff. But they don't want to care about the context. They just see something that they deem racist and it automatically becomes racist. That's our society today, people. But was there anything else you looked at in the last week when it came to wrestling news? Because I'm gonna wrap it up shortly. But if you had anything that I didn't go over,
Not really. I just saw the fucking, the beer truck thing, the fucking AEW stuff, and I was just appalled at how cheesy and how they're just taking big moments and even though I wasn't a kid watching the Ric Flair Shawn Michaels thing, it made me feel like I was a kid again watching one of those big moments. And now they're just taking that and taking four wrestlers that I absolutely hate and involving them in that. So Way to go, AEW, for killing what's left of childhood.
And it just goes back to, you were completely lying about the fact you were going to be an alternative to WWE. You were going to not mention WWE because you were not going to make the same mistakes that WCW and TNA did. And you couldn't even bother to go a year without doing it. It's kind of disappointing. It makes you look like an even worse company, honestly. But what can you say? They're gonna do their own shit. They're gonna take their jabs, and they'll probably go the same way that TNA has gone over the last 10 years and see their audience dry up slowly but surely until they become like an ROH type where there's like not even maybe like 10,000 people that watch daily. Just pathetic. Honestly pathetic, and I still don't get why the Smarks act the way they do with this company. And yeah, I don't know if the nepotism is as strong as WWE because let's be honest, nepotism is pretty big when it comes to the WWE, especially when we have Charlotte Flair every week. It's hard, and of course Randy Orton, love him or hate him, that's still nepotism. But yeah, AEW is just going to be the next TNA. I think the Smarks will get tired of it at some point. They'll stop marking out the way they do now for it, and it's just going to be another tragedy. Watch for the rise and fall of AEW on the Peacock Network in 10 years, folks.
You give them 10 years, I give them 5.
Well, I'm sure WWE is not going to mention AEW until that time span. I'm with you. It'll probably be 5 years. It'll probably be less than that. But WWE is just going to wait until people think, oh, remember AEW? And then they'll go into the rise and fall of AEW bullshit right then and there. That's my predictions with that.
Yeah, I they can't do anything right. Even their basic shows and pay-per-views, like everything sucks. You can just see the low budget quality of this company through their stories, through who they actually have on the roster, through the promos, through the special effects. It's just like you go to
Breakable
Hollywood
steel, people. Breakable steel may have cardboard with a mattress underneath.
You go to like Hollywood and then you go to a drive-in theater. You see 2 movies, but you obviously know which one's the drive-in and the shitty quality. So it's the same thing with this. You can just see the cheapness. Like,
yeah, I mean, when it comes to wrestling, I mean, doing that stuff is fine, but you have to show it in a way that looks real. Because if you're just going to expose the business and put a camera right in front of where Chris Jericho was going to land on and see all that bullshit that goes on, it takes you away from it, honestly. I know wrestling is stage and wrestling is real and everything. You're supposed to make it at least look real. Make it look like it is real. Have people that can cut promos that almost seem real. Because that's what makes wrestling awesome. And it feels like we have completely lost that over the years, especially ever since WCW and ECW closed up and Vince decided he didn't care anymore. But yeah, I think hold on, we'll do one more from Andy because he's been a very loyal viewer here. At least TNA we're drawing 2 million average. AEW doesn't come close to that, and they never will, especially not in the way TV is these days. I mean, I'm pretty sure even back when the last shows were getting like 10 million or even more, they still wouldn't even crack 2 million.
I mean, TNA had like fairly big names like Jeff Hardy, Bobby Lashley, Kurt Angle. I know a lot of people hate Samoa Joe, but his stuff with Kurt Angle originally, like the whole, Kurt Angle can't beat him and then finally beats him in like a match, that was actually a decent thing. And then, they're 6 sides of steel and all the weapons on top and X Division, that was at least stuff that, if it isn't A quality, I'm not saying it's A quality, I'm willing to admit that, it's watchable. It's not something you flip through and say, oh God, I just wasted 5 minutes watching this. Like, there's actually big names or semi big names. I'm not talking about Matt Morgan. I'm not talking about fucking Kazarian. Like, the Judas Messias Abyss thing was tolerable. Like, the TNA had moments, and you could actually see that they put effort into things. You could actually see they tried with stuff. It may not have all been good. Some of it may have come out like shit, but you can see they damn well tried. Whereas AEW, like, if this is them trying, I don't want to see them half-assing it, because if this is them trying their best is just laughable. It's a joke. Like, I can't think of any big names on AEW. Like, I can't think of anybody say, "Oh my God, go to watch AEW."
Chris Jericho. That's it. Sting. I don't even though Sting does nothing.
I don't count them though. Jericho he has no reason to be there.
Like, and Sting has no reason to be there either. I mean, if you're not wrestling, why are you even there?
Yeah, like, you can't think of any actual people who've been. I think Jericho is the only one on there who's actually been a decent main eventer or like an actual world champion.
Well, Sting was too for a short period with WCW, especially when he was feuding with Hogan.
Yeah, but that was all the way back then. But I'm talking in the past 5 to 10 years. Like, their roster's made up of nobodies. Like,
yeah, I agree.
That's the thing. You don't have a lot of veterans. You don't have a lot of good people helping these mid and shitty card people. Like,
I mean, what is Arn Anderson going to do with these people? Arn Anderson, who only has one good working arm, but we're supposed to depend on him to tell these guys about this shit. Anyway, I want to actually give a shout out to the Wrestling Snowman because he shouted out to me. Always good to talk to you, man. I've known the Wrestling Snowman for a good 5 or 6 years, and always a good guy, always a good one. He has one video and it's absolutely badass, much better than anything from AEW, much more than Wrestling Otaku. I suggest you see it, folks, if you really want, because the Wrestling Snowman is awesome. All right, we're gonna end it right here. I don't know where our next video will be, but we'll probably figure it out. But yeah, I'm just gonna end with AEW sucks.
It does. Fuck AEW.
Rest in peace, New Jack, and see you guys later, and take care.
Later.